In the words of Nas, it's been a long time coming. Welcome to the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince of Fresh Air. I'm of course your host, the beloved, the most charismatic man in entertainment. Beat that, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Anyway, this is not about me. This is about my next guest. New location. As you might see, I don't have the iconic dish soap in the back. But this is not about me. This is about my next guest. Now, who is my next guest? Well, no need to fear because the main man is here. I've had him on the podcast. It's been a few years, and I'm glad to finally catch up with him. I was just on his popular platform not too long ago, but I want to give him a formal introduction. I've been through the tail of the tape with this man, but he hosts. He's a podcast producer. He's a writer, sports writer. This guy's done it all. He's seen it all. He interviewed some of the most famous jazz musicians, famous musicians of all time, local and on the main stage. Amazing guy. He hosts his Neon Jazz famous interviews. Please help me introduce Joe Dimino to the
All
podcast.
right. I love it. Thank you, man. It's so good to be back. I every time we get together, we have a good time. It's wonderful, and yeah, I love it. I remember the last conversation we had about Denzel, and there was a clip that I caught recently about how much he did for the industry, and I think about you. So you got me. You've woven in so much manifest destiny into Denzel Washington that's what I
Right.
think about when I see him.
That's what I'm telling you. I mean, Denzel's the greatest. But I've said it time and time again. I got to work with him at some point. If I don't, that you might not hear from me again, Joe. That's it. It's the
That's
bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
100%.
So how's life been? It's been I think like 2 years since I had you on. How's life? Like I said, you interview some of the most well respected names in jazz and music. And just how's life been treating you over the last 2 years since we last spoke?
It just so happened that we scheduled this when we did, so there's nothing about the timing, but I got to say last week I went through a story in Kansas City that was one of the greatest things that I've ever lived through in my entire life. And this is what happened. On the 8th of April, I got a letter from a fan. Her name's Tracy, and she was writing on behalf of her dad who lives in Texas. She's in California, and they would listen to my podcast every night for like a year and a half. They would get on FaceTime, they would do the split screen, they would listen to my podcast, talk about it, and go to bed. And she just wrote me a letter saying how much they loved it. They love the format, they love just the whole thing. So it floored me. It took me like a day to get my thoughts together, and I replied. And she came back and said, "Thank you. My dad's the biggest Count Basie fan." And at that point, I was working on a campaign for a show coming to town on International Jazz Day, April 30th, that was going to be the Count Basie Orchestra at the Music Hall in Kansas City. So I asked my rep, who works for UNESCO, a big organization, a big international organization, can we secure money to fly him in to see the show? And they agreed to it. So we flew him in, we got him hotel. He came into town last week, totally loved the show, had a
Oof.
wonderful time. The media covered it. I got to meet him before the show. He loves Labatt Blue, the Canadian beer, which is more important now than ever. I gave him a six pack. We had a moment, and it was just unreal, man. Like just the whole thing, just this little show, this little jazz show turned into this 88-year-old man who now he's through the early stages of dementia, and he's just loves jazz. And finally he had that chance to come to Kansas City, never been here, the cradle of jazz, to see the Count Basie Orchestra live. It was cool, man. It's been a hell of a week.
Man, that sounds like an amazing thing. Let me run this by you. Because someone asked me this the other day. Are you like sometimes do you forget uh how popular your show is? Do you forget or do you remember the moment where you was like, this is it, it's finally clicking, I'm finally getting the attention I want? And has it sunk into you yet? Or you still like, I'm still putting in the work, I'm still doing what I gotta do and stay humble?
I don't feel at all like I've even made, like I just do it. It's a part of like when you wake up in the morning and you put that coffee on and you click it. I remember a comedy set. My wife got me tickets to Seinfeld in January, and he had this bit about coffee is the best part of the day. Why go any further? Because after you have coffee, everything starts happening. And I think about the fact that it's kind of like making coffee. It's kind of like doing whatever. It's like this is just a part of what I do. But seeing watching a fan in the eye, maybe that was the moment. Maybe last week it was the moment that I knew this was real. Because as you know, you get into this world and you feel like you're in a vacuum. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're putting it out there. It's this continual wheel. It's like the mouse is just running around this wheel. And I think sometimes we almost don't have a moment to just take that breath in and say, "What's up? What are we doing? How is this working?" But maybe that was the moment last week where it was like it's really having an effect. It's like there's people that are out there that are listening, and that it's a good feeling. I mean, you're not doing it specifically to get for me to get into this big echelon, but if you can have ears and you can have people that are being receptive, man, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, and let me run this by you, because I was having this conversation with this publicist, right? And we're starting to see how podcasts, during the pandemic, everybody had one, and it was still kind of picking up, and still getting the steam rolling. But now you see Will Smith, you see Denzel, you're seeing all these icons that would never do anything besides, live TV. Now
Yep.
they're doing podcasts. Are you shocked to see how fast it has risen?
Yeah.
And if you could interview anybody, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Okay, so I got to tell you, I am blown away. Like I was just talking to someone earlier on today about how we were kind of talking about COVID and how divided everybody got, how black and white everything got. But podcasting was the shining beacon in that time period. It created this space, this gray area where we're like, we're all way more alike than we are different. So I think that was one of the beautiful outgrowths. And as you know, producing this content and being in this world and making friends and admiring all of these people that you get to interview, it's amazing. So
Yeah.
there's a couple people that I would love to talk to. I would love to talk to Barack Obama at some point. It would be great to just have a little bit of time. But I would love to have a longer format with Dwight Gooden, who was my hero growing up. And I actually got to meet him a few years ago in Kansas City. And yeah, if I could have a longer format with Doc, that would be totally cool.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be an interesting conversation. I mean, his wife is doing her runs on various podcasts, and it's still shocking to me to see Michelle Obama doing a podcast.
Yeah,
Mostly just because for the longest time, no, unless it was a late night TV show or you would already established like Joe Rogan,
yeah,
you wasn't really getting these type of guests, and now you see people. I hate to say the name, Shannon Sharp. Not that I have anything against him, but what he's going through. But you're seeing a lot of these podcasts get major deals. They're making a lot of money. So let me run this by you. If you can just snap your finger, what would you want to happen for you? Would it be to just get the icon legends on the podcast? Would it be to get $100 million Spotify deal? Like, what would make you happy in your journey so far?
man, that's a great question. I would have to say, and I think this is the plight of a lot of podcasters out there. It would be nice to get sponsors. It would be nice to have levels of like monetary compensation to a certain degree. That's not why we do it, but it would be nice to have that because at the end of the day, the amount of work that we put in as podcasters into these is quite a bit. I mean, you can go through the list of just one interview what you go through, and then when you do the collective of that, if you do it on a regular basis, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And it's like any other job. It's like anybody like that's doing technology or banking or teaching or whatever. It's like they love what they're doing, but they're there because they need to make ends meet. And it would be
Yeah,
nice if you could have that relief brought off of you where you don't have to work. I mean, think about the world of acting and all of that. How much
yeah,
relief it is when those people finally get their payout and they don't have to worry about certain things. It
right.
just it would be nice, you know.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Now, I wanted to ask you something. It's kind of escaping me, but because you had a great point. Um, Radio. That's what I want to talk to you about. Radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
Howard Stern, The Breakfast Club. I watch on a daily basis. But there's an ongoing conversation about radio shows, and even though you're a podcast host, you also are a radio host. You're also a radio star, and you've been doing it for over 20 years. Do you think radio is dying off?
Yeah, I think it's getting to that point. In fact, in Kansas City, we just had a big time guy that was morning radio named Johnny Dare, and he went off the air like that, like all of a sudden he announced it. He said, I got one more show. Like the company, I think it was Odyssey, gave him one more morning to do it. And I tuned in and it was gut wrenching just hearing everybody talk about
Yeah.
all these years. I mean, he was on, I think, for 25 years. Everybody that tuned in, everybody that loved him, he was a local celebrity. And all of a sudden, overnight, he was gone. And I think there's many more instances like that in radio that are happening. They're getting swallowed up by other global things. I think the big thing with radio is that there's too few people that own it. I think all that conglomeration of all these media entities has just made it easier for the people at the top to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and just get rid of this. We're going to put this in there, which is why it's so wonderful that we have podcasting. We have these, we have these equal voices. We have all of these, just this variety of content that you can pick up and run with, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I remember growing up as a kid, being in a car, hearing the radio, and over like the last, I would say, 8 years, most people just hook up their phone, put on Spotify to YouTube, put on a
Yeah.
podcast. And do you think podcast is what's in right now, and this is going to be going forward like the new medium, not only just for radio hosts, but for people who have like a media platform? Do you think podcast is like the new end?
Absolutely. And I can't believe it's gone this long because I really thought it was going to be kind of this pandemic era explosion of a new media and it was going to get explored like everything else and kind of like in new types of media like when CDs came out, everybody was worried about the cassette tape. And then, when digital format came out, everybody was worried about CDs, which they should be. They're really kind of going away. But it's like every time there's something new, it gets explored and we go on to something else. And I don't
Yeah,
know what that is, but right now I know that podcasting is it. It's definitely the media, the medium, the way, and for good reason, you know.
yeah, yeah. No, as a, you're a creator, you're entertaining yourself. So let me run this by you. Are you into? You're a movie fan, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because this has been an ongoing fun debate that I've been having with friends, people on a podcast. So it seems to me, especially now that Marvel just had the new movie Thunderbolts come out, a lot of people have been saying that Marvel's dominating the movie theater business. A lot of great movies that would be in the movie theaters are now going to streaming. Do you think superhero movies, the big blockbusters, the superhero Marvel movies, do you think that is taking over the entertainment industry for a good or bad reason?
I think it's taking over, and I think there's a mincing of both. I think there's a really like I see. I grew up in the '80s, and I used to every Tuesday the comic books would come out, and all of these characters have become these mega stars. I would have never, when I was a kid, there was no way that I would have believed that that would have become a reality. Like I mean, there was some TV shows, there was cartoons, but when it kind of started happening and it steamrolled, but I think this is the superhero phenomenon is a bigger. Um, a bigger issue with Hollywood because they're just not doing what they did in the 90s with like indie films and like real creative films, and there's not that budget. Everybody wants to pump all of their money into these big blockbusters to make as much money as they can because Hollywood's not making as many films as they used to. So
Right.
they got to it's got to be meteoric. It can't be everything kind of spread into this egalitarian mindset. It's got to be this big thing. So I think on one hand, I love the idea that all of these characters have become and they're really good movies and there's character development and people love it and they're grabbing onto it. It's not superficial. There's a lot of depth that goes into it, but I also think it's kind of overshadowed a lot of these people out there that make it for more of an artistic kind of there's like a real creative marrow that goes into a lot of people that want to
Yeah.
put film out there that are getting overshadowed by the big blockbusters.
Yeah, it's rough. It's hard because and this is a great way for me to shout out Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan, because Sinners is a movie that, if they would have released it around the same time as Thunderbolts Marvel, I don't know if it'd be doing as well it would, because
Yeah,
for the longest time, if you have a movie coming out anywhere near a Marvel movie, it guaranteed not to really make that much.
yeah,
And I think part of the reason, and I've had this conversation, I think it's the attention span of people. A lot
Yep.
of people, if you're going to spend 25, $30 just on a movie ticket with the popcorn, the drinks, all that, you're looking at, especially if you have a family, over $100 for this, right? So for a lot of people, what grabs your attention? What makes you suspend that disbelief? Is it watching a mid 40s guy chase a 25-year-old girl? Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, Hitch was amazing, right? But
Yeah.
now it's people want to see the Thors, the Iron Mans, and all that stuff flying around, going through buildings, Hulk smashing everything, right? So I want to ask you, do you think social media has played a big part on radio, movies, podcasts? Do you think social media has played a big part in why the landscape is finally changing?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely we've and it's weird because we've gotten away from like traditional media in a lot of ways. I mean, we don't have like there's people can click onto social media and grab onto these stories and they'll take it as gospel. And it's like it's
Yeah.
just completely made things confusing, which is why it's kind of led to these conspiracy theories and people not trusting the media because there's all these infiltrated sources. Look at the inauguration this year. The biggest people in social media were standing behind Trump at the inauguration. So, do you think they may not have some kind of sway in what's going to be put on their platforms? It's that kind of a thing. So then you got people that are mistrusting, like what's getting put out there and why? Because I know on my feed sometimes, even though it's reading my rhythm, I'm getting things in there where it's like, how is this getting in here? And it's like I think it's just there's so many influences right now, so many ways to grab people and make you believe in certain ways, and there's so many good pieces being put out there that's motivating and persuading people for good or bad. So it's a very interesting time. And then you throw in AI and what AI is doing and what it can do. Like my son was watching something the other day, and Steph Curry was at a press conference, like, "Yeah, man, I want out of Golden State. I want to play with LeBron. I don't like." I was like, dude. That's not happening. That's AI. So it's like now we got to dispel what's real and not. It's like an Aldous Huxley novel unfolding in front of us right now. And that's the backbone of that is social media.
Yeah, funny story about that. My first time actually with because I heard of AI. I'm not oblivious to it, but I remember on social media it was going viral on X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and all that. There was a video of Tupac and Notorious B.I.G. rapping, and everybody thought this was maybe just an unreleased song and everything. And it
Yep.
turns out no, it was AI generated, and it
Yep.
just sounds so much like them. It's scary. I don't
Wow.
know. Like I'm in a weird space where it's like as content creators, as entertainers, right? On one hand, I do to see the negative effects of AI, people losing jobs. The pay is going to change and all that. But as someone who's technology curious, it is interesting to see what technology will be like.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I always think about, I talk to, a lot of older people, and they always say, "Oh, what are these smartphones? You can do all this with that." And for them, this is new for us. Imagine 50 years from now what's going to be new to us,
I know.
and that's the crazy part, right? And so I'm curious to see where it leads.
Yeah.
I think it's here to stay. So we
Yeah.
just going to have to learn to deal with it. But enough of that. Let's get back to you. What is a fun fact about you? If someone never met you, they just looking at you. What is one fun fact that someone would have never guessed about you?
When I was a kid, my best friend growing up, his name was Bill Denny. Unfortunately, he passed recently. He had an aneurysm. It was bad, but he was my go-to wiffle ball guy. We collected baseball cards. We were just kind of we used to call baseball players at their hotels. I got Jose Canseco on the phone and all these people, and we would hustle and get autographs and just we were just kids, but we were hardcore at what we did. And I remember at one point he called me up and he said, "Joe, I need you to come over right now. It's Hawaiian shirt night on this late night. It was a local cable late night show. And the guy was wanting to be David Letterman. It was like 84, 85. And he said, come down here. And if we go down to the studio with Hawaiian shirts on, they'll give us a Gumby and a Pokey. And they used to do the Gumby Pokey things. They do all this claymation stuff on their show. And it was just like, and I grew up in this town called Liberty. So we run down there, we get on the show, and it's bright lights, all this stuff we'd never seen before. We're just transfixed, like, oh my God. God, we just entered a whole other realm. So we go in there, the guy kind of interviews us and gives us a Gumby and a Pokey. And we go back and we're ecstatic. We just had our moment, didn't realize how it would reverberate out. And we started going to like the football games and all that. They were like, dude, that's the guy from the late night show. We're going to go down there and get a Gumby and Pokey too. It just turned into this phenomenon. And we were just jacking around and it turned into this thing. So, yeah, that was my early experience with the media and all of that. It was fun. It was cool.
I wish I grew. I hear so many stories about the '80s and the '90s.
And
I wish I had experience. I know it was a wild time. A lot of every era has their negative things, but
yeah.
I mean, why it's actually funny. Last time I was on your show last week. We was talking about horror movies, right? And
Uh-huh.
one of the things I always see and I like is when I watch horror movies from the '80s and the '90s. Man, it just seems like a whole complete different vibe.
Yeah.
Different the hairstyles, the outfits, everybody was just it was just different. Like, do you ever like not that I made you, but have you ever like do you ever sometimes like think back, man, I missed that time, I missed that
Oh,
period.
yeah,
No
dude.
social media, no nothing. It was
Yeah.
just vibes only.
No, we didn't have any pictures. It was just all these memories in our head. We'd have Polaroids and things here and there, but even like horror movies were so shocking then. Like why I was watching them at that age. I remember when they cut off Jason Voorhees' head at the end of that first movie. I was like, "Oh my god." Like we went there. Like it isn't just like slasher, we're guesstimating. There's a little nudity, there's a lot of gore. It was like his head came off his body and it was like, "Wow." It was wild. But no, I think about those times, just how things are different. Like, I would go ride my bike all day throughout the neighborhoods. I'd come back, I'd have blood dripping off me because I wrecked in the bike. And it was just like, here, we'll get some peroxide, be careful tomorrow. And it's like there's all this magnification. And I'm a parent, I'm guilty of it, where you're just toning in and being as careful as you can. But there's something beautiful about that Wild West restlessness of just experiencing life, because it's just like all these musicians that I interview that go to these prestigious colleges. They pay hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands of dollars for an education, but they really learn when they get on the bandstand with the older cats. They really learn when things happen on the stage. And that's kind of the way the 80s was. It was the stage. No education, no anything. You go out, you figure it out. I mean, I remember I was so desperate to play video games in the 80s that I would take all of the little poppers that were on cans, and my friend and I, Matt, would just throw them in the machine until a quarter fell out, and we would just sit there and they would just go in, and we'd be like, come on, come on. It was like being at a slot machine for kids, and finally that shiny quarter would go down, and then we'd have to farkle to see who would get the quarter to go to the arcade. It was wild, dude. It was fun.
Man, it sounded like a crazy time. I was when I was living in Manhattan, New York City. Um, I remember I used to go to a place called Barcade, and they used to have a lot of those retro games, and it's just cool to see like how things have changed. Like back then, everything just seemed so simple. Everything just it seemed like people were just all about life and having fun. And
Yeah.
I think, like I said, time changed. Social media has come, and I think it's changed for a good thing. There's always gonna be negatives. But like, what is one thing you really miss about that? Was it the video games? Was it the festivals? Was it the seeing Jason on the movie screen? Like, if you can think of one thing that you miss the most, what would it be?
I think it's just the feeling of the way life was like when you go to like a Burger King or you'd go to McDonald's, you get like really fun glasses as kind of your
I
prize.
remember those.
Yeah, so when you got a meal, you got that. The promotions that were going on, there was kind of this like absence. Like when Michael Jackson did a video or like a commercial, it was a big deal, and you had to wait to watch it. I remember being outside with my friends when Panama, I believe, came on. It was a premiere on MTV, and we all stopped playing. We came inside and we just watched the TV. And there was Eddie Van Halen going across the table, and all these papers were flying. And we were like, "How is Alex Van Halen really playing the drums, or is that like a motorcycle revving?" Like the whole thing, we were constructing these worlds, and it was like finally in the 80s it was like we had this bridge between reading a book and having a world constructed, and then having kind of little bits of like visuals that would come in and help you create this world. So I think it was really about the imagination and about just waiting for that sap to come down, throwing the little things into that can bank and waiting for the quarter to come down. It was like those things of like really sweating hard to figure it out, that was fun.
Yeah. I, I want to ask you this. Especially because you're into music, you interview some of the, like you said, most of the most iconic music legends. Back then you had the Beatles, you had Michael Jackson, Elvis, Johnny Cash. You had so many iconic people. You had a lot of bands. It seems to me in 2025, we don't have the Beatles anymore. We don't have that Elvis Presley, and I think part of the reason is the music industry has kind of changed. So
Yeah,
back then, those type of artists were that, you want to go see them.
yeah,
Now it is more hip hop based, more pop based. Jazz still has its place, but I do think mainstream wise, what's really catching people is the Taylor Swifts, the Drakes, the Kendrick beef, all that good stuff. For you, is there is there a culture change in that? Like, do you think that you know pop, hip hop, jazz, and everything? Do you think everything is always changing? So now, hip hop and pop is what's in right now. But do you think jazz can really make that big combat that it had in the 80s and 90s?
I think there's cats that are doing it right now. Kamasai Washington is one of those that's kind of bridging this world of jazz and hip hop and electronica. And I think there's people that are melding it. I don't think we're ever going to go back to analog jazz. I think people that when they discover it are going to feel it in a way, and they're going to go back to Miles and Coltrane and Monk and all those cats. But I think that we're always looking for that next level and that ceiling and the polished kind of pop kind of thing, and even with R&B and hip hop is kind of the way we're going now. But I think it's going to undulate. I think there's going to be people that are going to come in that are going to be really unique and have a voice, like Jelly Roll and all these people that are
Yep.
doing very unique things. I mean, who would have thought Beyonce would do a country album and have a full tour and a full thing going? I mean, there's people that
Yeah.
are going to do things that are going to be totally surprising. I remember when Garth Brooks did that country phase that he had for a while, where it was like he I think it was called the Chronicles of Chris something, and it just flopped and it didn't work. So I think
Yeah.
it's all about, it's that entrepreneurial spirit. We should be able to fail and fail forward, and I think that's what music's always going to do. And I mean, there's a documentary I just watched on Clive Davis about the way that he became the ear for the industry and how he watched talent through the decades. And if you watch that, you'll see that we're really genuinely going through a natural confection of music. And I never want to be at a point where it's like, yo, I remember when things were this way. I just know that music is this continual evolution forward, and I celebrate all of it. Even if I don't listen to it, like Kendrick Lamar is not someone that I listen to on a regular basis, but when I watched him at the Super Bowl and I see what he's done and how many awards and how many people he influences, there is a magic to what he does and how he does it, and I'm completely allured by it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think people like Jelly Roll, we're seeing a resurgence in country. I'm not including Beyonce now. I think this is just just a little money grab situation. Anyway, I'll move on from that. But I think people like Jelly Roll, and I'm forgetting some of them because I'm not really big into country. I was just in Nashville, amazing place.
Yeah,
But I think part of the reason it's changing is that you're seeing them expand and grow. WWE, for instance, they bring out a Bad Bunny, they bring out a Travis Scott, they bring out musicians not only that it exposes their fan base to a new artist, but allows the artist to expose themselves and grab new fans. And I think people like Jelly Roll, I only started knowing about him because he started showing up at UFC events,
yep,
every weekend, and so he started growing his brand that way. Post Malone, that was shocking to see him transition back over the country, but he's killing it. And I
yep,
think part of the reason is people are realizing, hey, if I want to be a successful music artist, I can't just do what the legends 20, 30 years ago were doing which was just doing the late night talk shows and just working on music. No, now you're working with other artists who are successful in other fields.
yep,
You're cross promoting with other entities. I think we're in a place right now where we're seeing the music industry and the entertainment industry finally collab. And I think that is one of the reasons why music is starting to pick up in a different way. And we're seeing the jazz genre, the country genre, the pop genre. We're seeing a lot of artists blend them all together. And I
yep,
think we're going to get to a point where I don't know if we'll just have a country genre. Obviously, we'll
yep,
always have them. But I think the lines are going to get blurred to the point where it's music is just going to be music. There's
Yep.
not going to be a pop star anymore
Yep.
or a country star. It's going to just be a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with that, or do you?
Yeah.
What do you
Oh, I
think?
totally agree. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think there's so many things that have mixed. There's so many. I think all of these things have become such levels of entertainment that they're all going to be hybrids of each other. Yeah, and that's where we're at. And that's how people are going to stand out by cross pollinating and getting their faces on different massive platforms.
Yeah. Now, before I put you in the hot seat,
Yeah.
put you in a hot seat. Let me ask you. Oftentimes when you're a creator, entertainer, you're always involved, and you have an amazing platform. What you do, a lot of people watch it. A lot of people know who you are, know what the show is. Have you ever really thought, okay, I'm interviewing some of the most respected jazz legends. Have you ever thought of, hey, what if I did pop stars, country stars? Like, did that ever cross your mind to
Oh yeah.
kind of just expand?
Yeah, I've done blues artists. I just did a very big blues artist here in town named Brody Buster. I love interviewing all kinds of different people. And I just see sometimes people that are on Netflix or other shows, and I'm like, I'm going to reach out and see if I can talk to them. So, yeah, I love broadening my vernacular. I've interviewed Josh Mallerman, who's a big rock guy up in Detroit. He wrote Bird Box. He's a big prolific author. I love crossing it up and interviewing all kinds of people. So, yeah, that's totally up my avenue.
Oof, yeah, you gotta get Chief Keef on there. No,
Yeah, totally.
I can see
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
Now, Joe, this is a new segment I've been starting, and I think I got to do it for you. This
okay.
is the segment we call it the hot seat.
I love it.
So it's actually not as bad as you think. But I'm gonna put you in the hot seat because as someone who's involved with music, we all got to make certain choices in life, whether we like it or not. So I got a list of the most iconic music legends of all time, and this is jazz. This all music. So I'm gonna put you in the hot seat. So I'm gonna give you two names, and you choose whichever one. You don't have to give a reason if you want, but you could just say this one is my choice or whatever. Just
Okay.
choose. You ready?
Sure. Yes.
All right. Elvis Presley or Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right, Prince or Elton John.
Prince.
Frank Sinatra or Bob Dylan.
Ooh. Oh man. I'm gonna have to go with Bob Dylan.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, this is gonna be a fun one. Ray Charles or Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. Yeah.
I, yeah, I
It's
agree with
hard.
that. I agree with
Yeah.
that. All right, let's do Paul McCartney or David Bowie.
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
Billy Joel or James Brown.
James Brown.
Let's do this. Bob Marley or Little Richard.
Bob Marley.
Ooh, okay. Michael Jackson or Prince.
Prince.
Really?
Yeah. I love Prince. He was so talented, so prolific, did so much. Talk about an amalgamation of different genres of things. He wasn't just one kind of thing. He did so much in his career.
I I gotta say, Michael Jackson, me personally, I grew up on him more. I like Purple Rain and all that stuff, but Michael just got the actually. Before I'm gonna continue with this, let me ask you: growing up in that time when you had Prince and Michael, what was the energy like? Because I didn't grow up in that. Like, do
Yeah.
you remember what it was like? Because I see videos of when Michael was just rising onto the stage, and you got people crying, falling out, going to ambulances because they're so intrigued. What was that time like?
I saw the Jackson 5 at Arrowhead Stadium when I was a kid. My dad was a car salesman. I got tickets and we went and saw him. So I saw the glove come up. It was unreal. It was that 80s thing you were talking about. What do you miss? It was that feeling, that unfettered, like we were on the cusp of all these massive acts. It was unbelievable. It was like, what is going on? But it was special. There was something that was very eternal. There was no scandals. It was pre-cancel culture. It was great. It was awesome. It's not taken away from all the things that we know of what people have done, but it was just a time where you just didn't have all of this noise that we have now. There was a purity, there was a difference to it. It just felt good, man.
Yeah, real quick before we get right back to the hot seat, I think that period you had, from Eddie Murphy's iconic, what was it, Raw? I'm forgetting the name of it. Delirious.
Yeah.
You had that. You had Michael. You had Andrew Dice Clay. You had George Carlin. You had so many different people who were so. And now, I don't know. I mean, outside of Michael and some of them, imagine the power of social media if they had it back
Oh my
then.
god. Yeah.
Oh my
It would
goodness.
be crazy. It'd be absolutely crazy.
Joe, it's always a pleasure to have you on. We always have amazing conversations. Let the people know where they can find you and what else, whether they could connect, watch the show. Let them know all those details.
Absolutely. Yeah. My one stop shop. If you go to my name, joedimino.com, you'll find me there. The show is Neon Jazz, which is all I have a weekly show and I have the interviews and then famous interviews with Joe Dimino. If you Google that, you'll have the show. I have a video component to it. So anything and all that you could Google my name, there's a lot of Joe Diminos, but when you see those, you'll know where to go and you can just dive right in. It's all good.
Amazing. That's Joe. I'm the most charismatic man, and we're jazzing it up. We'll catch you in the episode. Thank you, Joe.
Yes,
Always a
sir.
pleasure, and we'll catch you soon.